The problem with facing for Sicilian is that despite your best efforts to counter something like the mainline dragon, it's easy to go astray on move 14 and be checkmated by move 20. That's why the C3 Sicilian is an excellent choice, because after just 2 moves you have your opening on the board. Has it got a good pedigree? You bet. Michael Adams plays it, and Anatoly Karpov. And you know, world champion Garry Kasparov has even lost to it. The good thing about the C3 Sicilian is that, if in doubt, white's going to play d4 and take over a centre, so black has to think of something to do. Perhaps the main line is to counter with 2d5. This is all very well, but the white response has been finely tuned. Let's see what happens. E takes d5, queen takes d5. Although this is played at the highest level, it can cause problems to those whose defensive techniques aren't up to, say, Anatoly Karpov. White proceeds with d4, and his ambition is to chase that exposed queen. When this happens, black's development frequently becomes retarded, and he can suffer a swift beating. The standard move is knight f6, and after white brings his own knight to f3, the path diverges. The first and most common move is e6, with the idea of bishop e7 to castle kingside. Now white can proceed in a rather predictable fashion, following the books with bishop e2, with a solid position and good prospects of advantage. But we want to be more adventurous than that. My own recommendation in this position is a move that I've played several times with success, and that's knight bd2. A little crafty move that sets black a problem straight away, and the idea is simply bishop c4 attacking that queen. For example, I've seen people respond knight c6, bishop c4, the queen is forced to retreat to d8. After knight b3, white has a space advantage which can soon be converted into an attacking formation that soon puts black under intense pressure. Next up is bishop g4, an annoying pin which most references refer to as the reason why C3 Sicilian should not be played. But of course this is purely because they all recommend the slow but solid bishop e2. In this case, I'm going to show you the latest move, the latest fashion, and the one that's got black trembling around the world. Ironically, it's a very simple move. D takes c5. This move has only recently even been considered, because everyone used to think that queen takes queen, followed by king takes queen, gives black the superior ending because the king is exposed. However, as even Grandmaster John Nunn found out, the pawn on c5 is the real key to this position. It's very difficult for black to get it back. Currently, this is thought to be a pretty good ending for white because basically he's a pawn up and black has to really fight to try and get any compensation. We will also be looking at Gallagher's recommendation knight c6. Now in the majority of cases this will transpose after knight f3. However, those with Gallagher's book on beating the anti-Sicilians will now walk into a line with c takes d4. This is all very well, but the latest theory has in fact condoned this move, and you could be on your way to a very easy point. White replies c takes d4, and the idea, which we will explore later, is simply knight c3 to knock away that queen. Another way for black to stop white getting everything his own way is to try knight f6. This rather odd-looking move is kind of like an Alekhine, because that knight will be chased around the board after e5. Consider one of the main lines. The idea is to encourage white to overstretch the pawns and then counter-attack. This can work, but also white does get a space advantage which, to those who are not so good at defending, can cause trouble. For example, if the knight comes to d5, white continues to expand in the centre with d4, and the usual move here, and perhaps the only move, is to take it. C takes d4. At this point, there are many moves for white to choose from. The normal move here is knight f3, This is all very well, but it does involve remembering a huge amount of material. I prefer a move recommended by Grandmaster Ian Rogers from Australia of simply queen takes d4. Immediately hit that knight and make black make the decision on how to defend. The good news about this position is that black does in general find it very difficult to get his pieces out. Normally, with a knight attacked, the obvious move is e6. However, after knight f3, it's white who finds it much more easy to develop. In some lines, it can also be useful to bring the queen across to the king's side for a lightning attack. Some Sicilian players sometimes think they're going to play a French after you play c3 and play e6. This is hardly the sort of move a natural-born dragon player will want to play, but if he's read his little book and he thinks this is the right move, that's what you're going to get. In fact, it's totally alien to Sicilian players who like to counter-attack and swashbuckling stuff, so normally white is very well in this variation. White proceeds to take over a centre with d4. If in doubt, play d4. The main line goes d5. White immediately takes it, e takes d5, and black takes with e takes d5. Now the stage is set for white to proceed very smoothly. Knight f3, black responds in kind, knight c6, and now bishop b5 with a slight edge, maybe a bigger edge even than that, because white just intends to castle quickly and then home in on this weak d5 pawn. There's always going to be players with the black pieces who just can't be bothered to learn the theory, and one way out for them is to play 2d6, a very quiet, nothing move frankly. So once again, we just get on with it. d4. Now they come to their senses. White is threatening simply to take, d takes c5, and exchange queens. So therefore they have to be a little bit more positive. One way to do this is knight f6. However, I'm going to recommend in this position a bishop d3, holding the centre with a good game for white. For example, c takes d4 is the normal move, c takes d4, g6, knight f3, and white can look forward to a pleasant middle game. Next in line is a move designed for those who are mad, bad and dangerous to know. The amazing but playable queen a5. What on earth is going on here? Well, there is sense to this move. If white quickly responds with d4, as we've been talking about, then the smile on black's face will be as big as a Cheshire cat, because after c takes d4, whoops, we can't play c takes d4 because of the king is pinned. Therefore, black's got his little trick in, and after queen takes d4, black is happy here because white doesn't have his central pawn dominance as usual, and knight c6 can hit the queen. However, there's always a way around such amazing moves, and perhaps one of the most forthright and direct moves is to have a little smile and play a3. This simple but effective move is good because the threat is d4, c takes d4, and then b4 to block that pin. The queen moves away, for example, to b6, c takes d4, and once again we have our natural superiority in the centre. I will finish off a video with a look at b6, an idea taken away from the Owens defence. The idea is simply bishop b7 to put pressure on e4. However, once again, black comes under a certain amount of pressure because it's rather cramped. There's not much room to develop the pieces. As usual, it's d4 to the rescue. Bishop b7, bishop d3, knight f6 to hit that pawn once again. Queen e2 defends the e-pawn, and white has a really easy way to continue. Just simply knight f3, castle kingside, and then try to stifle all of black's opportunities. And the game I'm going to show you is the classic example of this. You won't believe it. 2 d5 is one of black's main lines and has to be taken seriously. However, white continues in normal fashion and can hope to gain an advantage straight from the opening. Queen takes d5 is natural and best. d4, knight f6, knight f3, and now the standard and most played move, e6. This is where the secret weapon comes into play. Knight bd2, hardly seen, but when played, strikes with vengeance at black's position. In this game, we're following Smitterdil Ernst, 2 GMs fighting it out blow by blow. When your opponent scuttles home after the game, wondering where this new move came from, the first thing he would probably do is look in a reference book, perhaps Nun's chess openings. He will look in vain though, because it's not even mentioned. But why is this? Why is one of the moves played by a number of GMs not included? Well, the reason is fashion. I've played it myself even. In fact, someone said to me, why are your games not on the databases of the computers? And the reason is because I've played this move mainly in weekend tournaments, where the onus is not putting the score sheets on the internet, but more likely in the rubbish bin. Therefore, even my games are secret on this. The dilemma in this position for black is trying to make it up as they go along. For example, in this position, the Swedish Grandmaster Tommy Ernst decided to take things cautiously and just get his piece developed. Pretty good advice, but after knight c6, that queen started moving around the board. Bishop c4. Now where to put it? The queen is obliged to retreat, otherwise it would just be attacked even more. So queen d8 was played. Now, knight b3. This is one of the key moves. White managed to get all his pieces developed, whereas black is still standing on the original squares. The pawn is attacked, so naturally c takes d4. The game continued. Knight b takes d4. That looks sound enough. And now knight takes d4. A little exchange of pieces, but there's one thing that we should watch out for. After this exchange, black's only got one piece developed, whereas already these 2 pieces are much more commanding. And also it's easy to castle just in one step, whereas black still has to get this bishop out. Black now played bishop e7 to facilitate castling. Now white, instead of castling measly, played a rather crafty little move, queen e2. And the reason I like this is because it stops e5. Because there's no point exchanging queens early when our main ambition is to attack. Black, being a GM, simply castled, not worried about anything. Likewise with white, and that's the point. Everyone's trying to get the pieces out, but with the queen on e2, these rooks are already coordinated. Whereas black, let's have a look over here. This is doing nothing, and the bishop is still dormant. These are things that black's got to try and work out what to do. Whereas white plan, just get on with it, get the pieces out, and let's get attacking. Consequently, bishop d7. A developing move, but it's not really doing anything much. Bishop f4, and this is what I like. The point is, you want control of the e5 square. The bishop's going to be plonked in e5 at some point, and then maybe even exchange this knight, which is defending the entire king side. Black's idea is to try and get some counter chances on the queen side. It can work, but it's kind of slow. And I think we're going to find out why it's particularly slow in this game. a6. Natural, but is it good enough? Rook ad1. Already the pin on the d-file is making the black bit nervous. Queen's under threat there. So, why not move it? Queen a5. Sensible stuff. Even more sensible is just to move another rook into the centre. Well, it looks okay from white's point of view. It's got his pieces all developed. But how about black? Well, these bishops on e7 and d7, they look nice enough, but are they actually doing anything? They're very defensive. So this is great for white. He can get on with whatever attacking notions he's got. And boy, he's got a lot. Just wait and see. Rook fe8. Bishop e5. Now the reason why I particularly like this move is because this queen over here is just a spectator nowadays. Before, maybe it had grand hopes of playing a big part of a game by leaping over here to h5, exchanging queens, trying to take away the pressure for the attack. But now, sad and lonely on a5, that's what it is. Rook a d8. Now this is all very well, but black's counter chances just haven't got going. Now, if someone said, what move do you really want to play? Do you really want to play? It'd be rook d3. Brilliant stuff. But why not bring that big rook over to try and squash black? Remember, only this knight is defending, and that's on the verge of being captured by this bishop at any moment. So black's in real struck here. Bishop c8. It doesn't look healthy, but that rook is now charging along the d-file. The fact is, black just seems to be playing a waiting game, waiting to see how he's going to be crushed. And I think Smitterdale is going to give him a helpful hand by playing rook h3 to give him a good idea how. Already, these pawns are looking perilous, particularly h7, because we're going to take on f6. So how to get around this? Well, one way is maybe to reroute that knight to f8. It takes time, but it can be done. It's knight d7. The problem is that white has all these pieces directed against the king, the rook, the bishop, and now the queen comes into the game. Queen h5. This pawn is looking decidedly unhealthy, but the whole point of this is to play knight f8. So there we go. It's at this point where white normally just completely goes astray, hasn't got a clue how to continue the attack. It gets repulsed and he loses. But in this case, there's a big move available. Knight f5. Throw those gold coins onto the board now. Why is it so good? Well, another piece is added to the attack. This g7 pawn looks decidedly ill. And if he's daft enough to take it, he takes f5. Then the queen swoops in. Queen takes f7. King h8. Queen g8. And it's good night. With the whole of white's army bearing down on the king, it's up to black to gamble. But looking around, it's difficult to find a good move, but queen c5 puts the question to white. For c4 bishops on pre, what to do next? Should he take on g7, giving up the piece? Or maybe there's a better move. No prizes for finding a better move here. b4. Doesn't care, gives up a bishop, if only to move that queen away from where the action is. Queen takes c4, nice little gift. So what happens now? Perhaps you take on g7? No. Prepare to launch yourself into space. Queen h6. Oh my god. What's going on here? Well, queen takes g7 is a major threat. And if takes, we get a round of applause. Knight takes h6, mate. That king's got nowhere to go. Well, it's looking pretty dismal. But there's one way out. Queen g4. Try to pick up as many pieces for your queen as possible. Nice idea, but does it work? Rook g3. Bishop f6. This is desperate stuff. Bishop takes f6. E takes f5. Well, this is a surprise. Suddenly, is this a back rank mate on pre? What's going on here? Have the tables turned? No way. Queen takes g7. Hurrah. This is stunning stuff. Black's obliged. Queen takes. Rook takes. The king forlornly hides in a corner. And now, a little bit of class. He puts another piece on pre. Rook g4. Checkmate.